Guy at the gas station. I was at the gas station and went up to the register to buy gas and some drinks as I was going on a small road trip. I got there and there is a large, balding man with ginger beard with the name tag Guy. I smiled at him and was polite, since I work customer service and try to be nice to everyone because you'll never know what kind of day said person may be having. Guy smiled at me and asked if we've met before. I've never seen him in my life and I made a joke saying I just have one of those faces. And laughed it off. I had alarm bells ringing in my head because of his tone. I had a deep sinking feeling in my gut as he took his time checking me out. Guy kept talking to me saying I looked great today and he guessed my dead name. My dead name, but I haven't told anyone my dead name in years as I am non-binary and hate people knowing. I try my best and keep my dead name a secret, plus I was paying with cash so I couldn't think of a way that he would know. I smiled more to brush it off, trying to imply that wasn't my actual name, saying no I got by Royal. He frowned and scratched his beard and I could have swore I saw bloody dandruff or something like that come down onto the counter. I tooled my change and went out to my car, filling it up as quickly as I could. I pulled out my phone with the intent to let others know my location and just to tell my friends and my mom, feeling hot breath on my dead and someone's body pressed up against my back. I spun around and there was Guy. The most ungodly smell hit my nose as looked down at me. I am 5 feet 6 inches, and my best guess that he was a 6 foot. Guy smiled, multiple of his teeth had been missing. He said I was rude for talking about him behind his back. I laughed it off and apologized. I went to quickly get the gas pump out of the car. Before I could even get my hand on it, Guy grabbed it from me and did it for me. Smirking and saying that I shouldn't bother doing such manly things, he went to explain that he finally knew where he knew me from. He explained I was sex slave in a past life, that he was my master and he knew my frame anywhere. I'm 17 and I have never met this man in my life. I nodded and tried to laugh it off saying oh really. I didn't want to anger him. The man didn't seem to be happy with that, as I tried to go around and get into my car. He opened the passenger door to get it. I was in full panic mode, and had started my car and put pedal to the metal with both doors swinging open. As I drove away, Guy had fallen to the ground and started to scream and curse. I pulled over after a mile and shut both of them. So Guy at the gas station, let's not meet again. Stopping at a gas station in the middle of the night is a very, very bad idea. There are two certainties in life, death, and the fact that being a woman alone in a gas station at night is scary as shit. The two often coincide, at least in theory, and let me tell you, I was theorizing a lot at that Shell station. I guess alone is not the best word to use there. There were other people at the station, but no one was traveling with me. There was a very tired, possibly stoned convenience store worker, and one other car hitched up to a pump. I'd been traveling down from Montana, on my way to visit family down in Colorado. It was about 6 hours into the trip that I began to regret my decision. A near 13-hour drive by yourself is a far cry from a pleasant experience. As I unstuck my back from the driver's seat and began to pump my own gas, I had no damn idea what state I was in, nor did I even know what town I was by. My best guess was somewhere in Wyoming. All I knew is that I wanted to fill up and find a motel, because I was close to falling asleep at the wheel. As I filled my tank, the other car drove off. Suddenly, I was left alone with the dozing gas station attendant and the vast darkness around us. The flickering fluorescent lights beamed overhead, but they did little to illuminate the surrounding brushland. Aside from the dull buzzing of the lights, everything was quiet. It was an uncomfortable sort of silence. The kind you expect to be suddenly broken by some kind of jump scare. I chewed my lip and looked around, but the pitch-black night offered no sign of anything ominous. Aside from itself, that is, it was a bit too quiet for my tastes, so I pulled out my phone and switched on some music. Thank God I'd had the foresight to buy a car charger. I have no idea what I'd do if I didn't have a podcast or an audiobook to listen to while I was driving. Quickly, to drown out the silence, I switched on my Spotify, and Take It Easy played over the electric hum. This set my nerves at ease for the time being, and I turned my attention to the pump. The numbers ticked by at a painfully slow pace. Practically 1 cent a second. I slapped the side of the pump twice, in the very helpful way that always gets machines to move faster, but it kept its pace all the same. As I huffed and stood there impatiently, just wanting to sleep, I felt something on me. Not like a bug, but like eyes at the back of my neck, like someone was watching me. I turned and looked towards the convenience store, expecting to see the clerk spacing out in my direction, but to my surprise, he was now completely conched out. His head was cushioned by a box of 3 Musketeers. Still, that feeling was there. I scanned the surrounding area, but I was entirely alone. No other cars were parked in the station. I tried to brush it off. It was late, it was dark, and I was an unarmed woman alone in a place with 0 witnesses. I was just being paranoid. That didn't mean I wanted to stick around, though. I checked the pump, but it was barely halfway done. Part of me felt like this thing was purposefully going slow just to screw with me. Half-heartedly, I kicked the wheel of my car to vent frustration, but only really managed to scuff the toe of my boot. That feeling of being watched still gnawed away at my neck, and I wanted nothing more to speed out of there as fast as I could. Still, I need gas, and getting a full tank now meant that I could restart my journey all the earlier the next day. It was about then, as I was standing by the open driver's side of my car, that I realized my music had stopped. I grabbed my phone, and it sleepily showed me that the power was out. I groaned and plugged it into the charger, gracelessly clambering halfway over the seat to do so. It took me a good half a minute to actually find it in the mess of fast food bags and opened luggage that was my front seat. I shoved the charger in with all the finesse of a drunken ape, and haphazardly climbed back out. It was through my passenger's seat window that I saw it. There was a deer standing at the edge of the parking lot. He was a big buck, with a set of antlers that would have a hunter drooling. He stood there, just staring at me from the edge of the parking lot. "Hey buddy, you watchin' me?" Before you ask, yes, I cooed at him. It was a cute animal, and I am a weak human who has a soft spot for anything fuzzy. "Sorry bud, but I don't have any food for you." The deer cocked its head to one side and kept its gaze on me. I just snorted and ignored it. At home, I had a bad habit of feeding animals off of my porch. In my head I was some kind of Disney princess, but more likely than not I was going to get bitten one of these days. If I'd had any food then, I probably would have offered it to the deer, but his luck wasn't very good, so I went back to urging the gas pump on. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw the deer take a few hesitant steps closer. I looked up, ready to talk to him again, when something stopped me. He moved slowly, but that wasn't that was bothering me. I froze, staring at him over the top of my car. At first, I couldn't place what was so unsettling about him. He walked with slow, deliberate steps, with his head lowered towards the ground. It reminded me of the way humans move when they walk on all fours. Then it dawned on me. He wasn't just curious about me. He was stalking me. At night, in the dark, some people tend to get a little jumpy. I'll admit that I am one of those people. Just then, though, I felt as though I couldn't move fast enough. It may have been irrational. Hell, I knew it was irrational while I was doing it, but I yanked the pump out of my car and closed the valve up as quick as my panicked fingers could manage. Deer don't hunt people. Deer are herbivores. I knew this. But there was no doubt in my mind that that creature was stalking me, and I couldn't get in my car fast enough. I scrambled into the driver's seat and slammed the door shut, simultaneously trying to start the car. Seatbelt be damned. I glanced up out the window, only to see it had gotten closer. It was under the lights of the gas station now, and I could see it clearly. What I had first thought was a deer was definitely not a deer. It looked like a deer. Yes, but there was something indescribably unsettling. It's hard to put into words. It was shaped like a deer, but it looked like it had been bent into that shape. Its bones curved unnaturally. It had a thin, straggly mane of black hair rubbing down its spine, and its hooves looked gnarled and chewed up. Its eyes were at the front of its skull. More to the point, they were human. Finally, I turned the key in the ignition and the car started up. I yanked the clutch as hard as I could and slammed on the gas. I didn't care if I tore up my tires. My heart was in my throat and I needed to get out of there ASAP. As I sped off, I took a quick glance in the rearview mirror. It stood watching me. Its head still tilted at an unnatural angle. Its lips parted slowly, curling upward, revealing 2 large, yellow teeth. It was smiling. I found the single fucking worst gas station bathroom in the country. There's a tiny gas station several exits off of I-97 way out in the country called Pete's Petrol. I always stop at Pete's when I'm making my monthly drive from home to the main office across the state. I fill up my tank, I grab a Red Bull, and I use the bathroom. Pete's Petrol is unique in that the bathrooms are a separate building from the rest of the station. I like that. I like the privacy. The washroom was small but clean and hardly trafficked. Stan, the current owner and the son of the late Pete, was the only unpleasant part of my monthly routine. It wasn't that Stan was rude or mean or aggressive in any way. The man was just off-putting. He was tall as a fence post and scarecrow lean. I don't think he got a lot of sun. Stan wore the same grease-stained set of blue mechanics coveralls every time I saw him. He never failed to drop what he was doing to come chat with me and couldn't take a hint if I was in a rush and trying to check out. Stan had heterochromia, meaning he had two different colored eyes. One was so brown it was nearly black, the other so blue it was almost gray. That wasn't his fault, of course, but he also liked to stare, which made the condition even more noticeable. Still, Stan always appeared harmless, if lonely, and he wasn't creepy enough to make me avoid Pete's Petrol. I found comfort in the familiarity. Then, one night after I got stuck in the office until nearly midnight, I made my last trip to Pete's washroom. The visit started like normal, if much later than usual. I popped into the station to ask for the key and got trapped in one of Stan's stories for nearly 20 minutes. Something about a hunting trip he went on. I was barely listening, all of my focus on my screaming bladder. Eventually, Stan released me and I sprinted across the parking lot. There were two washrooms in the small building, a men's and a woman's, though so few people used the station it seemed pointless to split them. Regardless, I used the key to let myself into the men's room. It was tidy, though there was a sour odor I couldn't place. There were two stalls and two urinals but only one sink. Someone had broken the mirror since my last visit. A great spiderweb of cracks slithered out from the middle. I made my way to a urinal and stopped. There was a stain on the white porcelain, a dark red ring of something like rust. I frowned. It was unusual for Stan to leave the washroom less than pristine. There was the issue of the lights, as well. They were dimmer than normal, casting jagged shadows on the tiled floor and white walls. I shuffled over to the second urinal, which was in perfect condition. After I was done, I flushed and moved to the sink. Just as I was washing my hands, I felt a rumble in my stomach. That cheap burrito from the food truck outside my office I'd eaten for dinner was going rogue. I shook my hands mostly dry and paused when I saw the splatter against the mirror. It was hard to tell in the gloomy light, but the droplets from the water appeared to have a red-black tint. I wiped my hands against my shirt and prepared to turn on the sink again to check the water. Then the rumble came again, more urgent this time, my guts twisting with necessity. I shot into the first stall, fighting with my belt like it was sealed with a combination lock instead of just a buckle. I managed to get in position just in time. 15 minutes later, I was washing my hands again when the water went completely red. I yelled and pulled back. The fluid was thick and stickier than water. I dried my hands as best I could and went back to the stall to check the toilet. Sure enough, the bowl was filled with crimson. I flushed on reflex and there was a gurgling sound. There was some kind of backup. I'd seen it happen before at Pete's. The place was so remote that it wasn't hooked up to any municipal wastewater. The station and its washroom had to be on a well and septic system. Those were static and had a tendency to get overwhelmed easily. I watched the red water swirl down the toilet. When the bowl began to refill, I screamed. The water was still red, but now it was full of bits and pieces of flesh and bone and muscle. I recognized a full human finger first, then, even worse, an eyeball. I threw up and then backed out of the stall. The parking lot seemed so much larger and emptier as I ran for my car. For a terrible stretch of seconds, I couldn't find my keys. They were in my pocket right where I left them, though, so in a moment I was in the car and then peeling out of the parking lot. The last thing I saw of Pete's Petrol was Stan watching from the window with a confused look on his face. I'm pretty sure I held my breath until I was a mile from the station. I was just starting to relax when I glanced in my rearview mirror and saw a tow truck rapidly approaching. Within a few seconds, Stan's face came into view as he hunched over the wheel, snarling. He was chasing me. I felt my whole body go cold. There was something very wrong with the washrooms at Pete's Petrol, and Stan probably wanted to keep that secret. I slammed my foot to the gas. The tow truck behind me was old but powerful. We went on a nightmare chase down the highway for the better part of an hour. At some points, Stan grew so close in my rear view that I could see the madness in his mismatched eyes, and the way his lips were back away from his teeth. I tried calling the police several times but had no reception at all out in the sticks. An hour after leaving the station, I finally began encountering the traffic around Annapolis. Even that early in the morning. There were cars on the road, lights, and even some cops. I finally made contact with 911 and told them that I was being chased. Stan and I both slowed down the closer we got to the city. Once I hit the city limits, Stan dropped away. I watched his tow truck take an illegal U-turn, heading back towards the gas station and its morbid washrooms at breakneck speed. I pulled over, still on the line with 911, and waited. The cops sounded skeptical when they found me on the shoulder of the road, but I was able to convince them to follow me back to Pete's Petrol. When we reached the station, I felt my stomach twisting for new reasons. The gas station and the washrooms behind it were all on fire. The place was so remote that it took another 30 minutes for the fire department to arrive. There was no sign of Stan. Once the blaze was finished and more cops arrived, they started looking around. I showed the officers the bathroom and the grisly things in the toilet. They finally believed me. Then a crew got into the septic tank and discovered a horrific scene. A dozen dead bodies were crammed into the disgusting space. The investigation is ongoing, but I got the basics from a cop while I was giving my statements. They believed that Stan was a killer. He'd been stuffing bodies into the gas station's large septic tank for years with no one the wiser. Finally, between the decaying corpses and excrement, the tank clogged and began to flow back into the pipes that connected it to the washroom. The red water I'd seen was blood and bone marrow and every other kind of rot from a submerged body. The chunks of flesh were a kind of backwash. Stan is still out there, they never caught him. I wonder, often, if he blames me. I was the one who made the discovery, the one who found the dark sickness in the washroom. Anytime I see a tow truck now, I watch it carefully.